Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us, the Athletics football correspondent David Ornstein and the Sun's football editor Charlie Wyett. So welcome to you both. Let's get straight to the game that finished at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium 1-0 to Spurs. Come to you, Charlie, with the back page of the Mail. Iceberg, Lucas Bergvall pictured with his finger to his mouth, and the headline, Bergvall keeps his cool to put Spurs on brink of Wembley final. Maybe a little bit premature with that second leg to come at Anfield, Charlie, but how impressive was Spurs? How different was Spurs? The headline's Iceberg. They're a lot more composed, weren't they?
Didn't concede a goal. They weren't a mess at the back, were they? I mean, it wasn't just a great result for Tottenham. And, to give themselves the edge over Liverpool, it's obviously going to be really difficult at Anfield next month. But to not concede a goal, they've got a rookie keeper, his first game in English football. Obviously, still got all those problems at the back, but they did defend well. And that'll be really pleasing to Ange Postecoglou. Obviously, gets a bit lucky. The fact that the bloke that scores the goal was lucky to still be on the pitch, should have had a second yellow card. So I understand why Arne Slot was particularly annoyed with the officials. But look, that's such a big result for Tottenham. They really, really needed this. Obviously, a lot of pressure on Postecoglou after the last few weeks. So to get that against a really, really good team. Liverpool weren't at their best. I think we saw that in the same way they weren't against Man United. But it doesn't matter. They still had a really good team out at Liverpool. And that is a terrific win for Tottenham Hotspur.
Certainly is. We'll get to Bergvall and whether he should have been sent off, David, but he is pictured on all the back pages. How impressive is this teenage midfielder?
An amazing story. He came from a little-known club in his homeland. He was heavily linked with Barcelona. Everybody thought he was going to be moving there because he's seen as a generational talent. So it's a fantastic piece of recruitment, which falls in line with a lot of what Tottenham are doing now, trying to get hold of the best young players around. And on that note, let's have a word for Archie Gray. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. He's had to fill in difficult circumstances in a position he's not familiar with recently because of injuries. And he's taken to it really impressively. And then the goalkeeper that Charlie mentions, Kinski, on his debut. I mean, he's only been at the club for a few days, but he played like a guy that's been there for a few years. He was so confident and assured. His distribution was excellent. He was clearly communicating very well. And he seemed entirely unfazed, despite the fact that you're playing one of the best teams in the world right now. And I thought Bergvall has conducted himself brilliantly in recent weeks, pretty much ever since he came into the setup at Tottenham, and the way he arrived onto that ball was sort of Lampard or Gerrard-esque. It was fantastic. Yeah, we can talk about whether he should have still been on the pitch, but it was a great moment that sort of vindicated Spurs' recruitment, and it also vindicated Ange Postecoglou for sticking with this attacking style of play. There's been talk of pressure from the outside, but inside they've been fully behind him. I've reported 100% that they back him, and this is why they believe in him to take this project forward. Now they go to Liverpool for the second leg, and that's going to be daunting at Anfield. But they need to get some consistency together, Spurs, and if they're going to deliver a trophy that Ange Postecoglou always says he delivers in his second season at clubs, and now they've got 1 foot in that final, and they'll hope to complete the job.
Yeah, imagine Spurs fans getting very excited. It's been a long old 17-year wait, hasn't he? The Guardian have the story. Bergvall's late winner gives Spurs the edge. Alisson pictured in the foreground, sinking to his knees there. Charlie, what about whether he should have been on the pitch, though? Have Liverpool got good reason to be frustrated there wasn't a second booking?
Yeah, I think Liverpool certainly have a good reason. Yeah, I think it should have been a booking, should have been a second yellow card. It's obviously quite ironic that this huge let-off for Spurs came just a few days after Ange Postecoglou's rant about them not having a fair and even playing field for the match against Newcastle. And I thought Postecoglou was talking rubbish. I thought the officials at the weekend got the decisions right, to be honest. But they didn't get the decisions right tonight. Obviously, I think Tottenham deserved the win. They had a goal disallowed quite rightly through VAR. So they did edge it. They did deserve to win. And ultimately, I think even Liverpool fans will admit that this was a bigger tie for Tottenham than Liverpool. Of course, Liverpool want to get through to the final. But looking where they are in the league, and of course in the Champions League. They're gonna be fine this season, but Tottenham really, really need this, as you've just said. It's been 17 years since a trophy, and if they can get to the final, and maybe at this stage it could be against Newcastle, who of course have not won a domestic trophy since 1955. So, what an unbelievable final that would be. But of course, Tottenham have got to go to Anfield, so there won't be any Tottenham fans expecting an easy game up there.
Yeah, we'll see a slender lead on that night, won't it? David, go back to something you mentioned before about Tottenham sticking with Ange Postecoglou, him sticking with his principles. Did you sense, though, just a bit that maybe he learnt from how Manchester United and Nottingham Forest have approached Liverpool? Was there a little bit more caution, a little bit inclination to sit off just a touch?
Yeah, I did actually. He's not stupid, and despite what he might say in public about sticking absolutely to his philosophy, you can do that while adapting somewhat. And let's see if somebody like Ruben Amorim is going to do that at Manchester United in these difficult days. It certainly suggested so at Anfield on Sunday, where they were much improved. And the same with Ange Postecoglou's side tonight. They're going to mature with each game. That's a natural progression. And you can't be making some of the mistakes that they have been on a consistent basis and expect improvement. And so that sort of balance was struck well tonight. And look, Liverpool had some chances too, and it could have gone a very different way. But I do like what, you hear from Ange Postecoglou and see, because we all want to ultimately see good football. And that's why he's earning a lot of plaudits as well. And I feel a lot of the sort of dissatisfaction among Tottenham fans stems from, years of disappointment. And they fear that that sort of feeling is creeping back in when they're having these difficult moments. But actually, Tottenham are embarking upon a very different project now, and they seem to have not gone for the biggest name manager like they did with a Mourinho and a Conte. They've gone for somebody who can hopefully, in their eyes, build with these younger players. I mentioned two for one out injured, Odegaard, who I really like that they signed from Burnley. And, you've seen Lancashire even get some game time up front as well. Clearly, and they have invested, but they're banking on a coach that's going to try and bring these players through, and it will require time and patience. And those are words that not many football supporters like. But some credit for a change to Ange Postecoglou. He's done really well tonight. Credit
to him. Great result for Spurs. Just a word on Liverpool, though, Charlie, coming off the back of the draw against Manchester United. Any signs at all that maybe the momentum is just slowing down a bit?
There was just no way they could possibly continue the way they were. I mean, it's been an extraordinary start to the season, or first half of the season rather, for Arne Slot, who we all thought, everybody, I'm sure, including those at Liverpool, the club itself, thought there'd be a bedding in period, but there hasn't been. They've played so well, obviously done brilliantly in the Champions League, let alone the Premier League. So it is inevitable that there's going to be a run of games where they're not at their best, and they certainly weren't tonight, and they weren't against Manchester United. And I fully expect them not to have too many problems against Accrington in the FA Cup. But of course, next week, huge game against Nottingham Forest, an intriguing game there. But yeah, they're going to have a spell, and I think all Liverpool fans are expecting that. So it was going to come at some time, but no Liverpool fan would have expected to be looking at the league table in both the Premier League and the Champions League, and to have seen Liverpool do quite so well.
Yeah, but as we've said as well, the League Cup defence not totally over either, just that 1-0 advantage. Let's go from Tottenham and Liverpool to talk West Ham United, sharing the billing on the back pages in terms of the main stories. Times has this headline: Potter takes West Ham job. Former Chelsea head coach signs contract until 2027 after Lopetegui is sacked. Gary Jacob reporting for the Times. David, we'll maybe talk on Lopetegui in just a second, but first and foremost, Graham Potter at West Ham. How does that strike you as a fit?
Well, it's been coming for quite some time, because they were in talks with Graham Potter before Christmas when things were looking difficult for Julen Lopetegui. Ultimately, he got a stay of execution. And now, finally, we're going to see this 20-month hiatus that Graham Potter's been in since Chelsea come to an end. And he's going to be back in the firing line. I think it's a really good appointment, of course. Like, he's done very well in his Premier League career so far, in particular those 3 seasons with Brighton and Chelsea, was a difficult environment at that moment, the first managerial appointment of the new regime. But we know what a good coach he is, and he showed that prior to England at Ostersund's as well. And he's going to have to, prove a point after how it ended at Chelsea. I think it will lift the place because it's not been a good appointment. It seems Julen Lopetegui hasn't worked out. It hasn't been given a great deal of time, and West Ham normally do give their managers time, which indicates that they knew this was wrong. The sort of feeling in the dressing room clearly wasn't right, judging by the pieces, by the likes of Gary and by Jason Burt and Jacob Steinberg as well did a really nice piece. Roshane Thomas in The Athletic. There's a lot of discontent there. The fan base seems to have been sort of downbeat during this period. They're not playing good football. They've spent a lot of money. They've brought in a huge amount of players. There's scrutiny also on Tim Steidten, the sporting director, but Graham Potter has an opportunity here, and I think he's got the credentials to do a good job. 2.5-year contract, which is longer than the 2 years Lopetegui was given, and clearly they're backing him to try and bring about an upturn, because not far over their shoulder is the relegation zone, and that is not where you expect to be for a couple of £100 million worth of investment.
No, just 7 points away. Let's focus on the environment at West Ham with the help of the Telegraph now, Charlie. A couple of pieces juxtaposed. We've got Jason Burt reporting on the details of Lopetegui's decline and demise at West Ham. Red flags that signalled the end of Lopetegui's turgid West Ham reign. That's on one side of the page there. He says that even in pre-season, his man management and body language was being questioned by people at the club. And then on the other side, you've got Sam Wallace, chief football writer, saying, Potter beware, get ready for chaos. Club. How difficult do you think it's going to be to work at West Ham for Potter or indeed anyone?
Well, I think the past sort of suggests that it can be quite a difficult club if you're a manager. Of course, David Moyes brought them a European trophy, but the regulars there were often frustrated with the style of football, which is why I thought the appointment they made in the summer was a strange one. It wasn't a good fit. It just reminded me of Pellegrini, really, a few years ago, that it just was not the right appointment. So I think, they've made the right one now in Graham Potter. Good to see a British coach as well back in the Premier League, because there's not many of them, are there? But he's going to find it difficult, but I think he's got a decent squad there. I think some of the signings they made in the summer were pretty good. So I have no doubts whatsoever that Graham Potter will do a good job. He'll lead them away from the bottom half of the table. And of course, there's only so much he's going to be able to do this season rather. But no, a decent appointment. West Ham have got it right. And as David said, West Ham haven't got a habit of firing managers early. They obviously realise this just wasn't the right fit. They shouldn't have made the appointment in the first place, but at least they've got the right man now, it seems.
Yeah, quick thought then on the team around him as well. You mentioned, David, before, Tim Steidten, the technical director, possibly on borrowed time as well. A lot of people looking at that, putting 2 and 2 together, saying Dan Ashworth might come in to team up with Graham Potter again. Is that something you see as realistic?
I'm not sure about Dan Ashworth coming in. I wasn't aware of that. Let's see what happens with Tim Steidten first, because there's been a lot of question marks about the recruitment, and it's a sort of failure that has many fathers when you look at it, because there's the board involved, there's obviously recruitment personnel beyond just Tim Steidten, there's managerial staff as well in terms of who's in the dugout, and they have a say in matters. And when you look across some of the most recent deals, Fulkrug at 31 years old, almost £30 million. He's been injured throughout. Luis Guilherme hasn't played, hasn't started a match. Max Kilman, maybe they overpaid for a bit. You go through it. Somerville hasn't really worked so far and isn't proving the value for money to date. And so there does need to be improvement. And it seems David Sullivan is taking a more hands-on approach in the January window. They will look to bring in a striker, of course, without Bowen and Antonio. But I think there could be more change at West Ham, in due course. Not necessarily immediately, but in the months ahead for certain, because for the amount they're spending, for their potential, for their stadium, for the quality at their disposal and the expectations of their fans, it's not good enough.
Going to be an interesting watch still, isn't it, West Ham? Thank you very much for now, David and Charlie. Back to you very shortly. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will look at more of the back pages, including this in the Mirror. Tottenham feature again with Iceberg, a kit hits Kop, but also stories about Kobbie Mainoo, Mikel Arteta and those balls. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you and welcome back to the Athletics football correspondent David Ornstein and the Sun's football editor Charlie Wyett. Let's go to the Mirror. David, come to you with this one by David McDonnell. We've got the main headline, of course, regarding Tottenham's win over Liverpool. Iceberg hits Kop. But there is the story regarding Kobbie Mainoo. United are quote-unquote confident on Mainoo that they can reach an agreement over a new deal that will keep him at the club. Is that in line with your assessment of the Kobbie Mainoo situation, David?
Yeah, I reported on this yesterday, Teddy, and it's quite a self-explanatory situation. Unfortunately for United fans, it doesn't make for pretty reading in that they've got a financial fair play, PSR issue, that means that pretty much anybody is on the table. Now, there may be a couple of untouchables, but the likes of Mainoo and Garnacho are not among them. And so if a massive offer that United deems suitable would arrive for one of such players, then, of course, they would have to consider it. But that's very different from them wanting to get rid of them. They do not, to my knowledge, certainly not Kobbie Mainoo. I think Garnacho would be more readily sold than Mainoo. And so they would like to keep hold of him. But there's a contract situation with Mainoo. He's under contract till 2027. There's an option to take it on till 2028. There's been no progress to our knowledge in talks so far. And so they'll have to try and make that progress as soon as possible. I'm not aware of developments, but if there's confidence at Man United, then fantastic for them, and to be able to keep Kobbie Mainoo would be brilliant. They would rather solve their PSR problems elsewhere, and certainly the reaction of the fans would suggest they would be mortified to lose him. So they better crack on with those negotiations, and there's so many spinning plates with that. Marcus Rashford, Casemiro, Anthony, Malacia, and so on. Also the desire to bring in some players. It's going to be a period of major change at Old Trafford on the pitch, and Ruben Amorim will hope to navigate that. There's going to have to be some tough decisions made. They won't always be popular, and that's why somebody like Mainoo and Garnacho are the focus. But if United can maintain such talent, especially homegrown and a Manchester boy in Mainoo, then nothing would, I'm sure, do them greater pleasure.
Well, hopefully that will console the United fans just for now. We're worried about Kobbie Mainoo and relax them a touch. Let's talk Arsenal, Charlie, on a lighter note. The back page of the Mirror, or maybe not, depending on your perspective. But Arteta's mocked for ball blame. John Cross writing that Mikel Arteta's been mocked by Carabao Cup organisers after his bizarre ball moan. I haven't seen it. Apparently a meme with 50 Cent above a clip of Arteta's post-match comments, Charlie. What do you make of this? Is it a bit of a gaffe by Arteta?
Look, I think the worst thing, of course, is that he said it on the back of a home defeat. Had Arsenal won 2-0, and Arteta still moaned about sort of the flight of the balls, and no one would have really sort of cared, would they? But the fact was, it was a really bad result for Arsenal, and I can understand why some fans are mocking him. I think, of course, that don't forget that Arsenal would have had these balls in the run-up to the game because, of course, each competition had a different match ball. And, of course, in those days of training before a specific game, whether it's in the League or the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup or the Champions League, the team practices with that specific ball. I understand that certainly yesterday players from both teams were actually commenting on sort of how the ball was flying through the air. So it wasn't just Arteta. Maybe it was even the temperature, maybe because it was very cold. But equally, a manager, when a team finishes the way Arsenal were up front, when the manager sort of complains about the balls, he's making himself a target there. Yeah, it feels like a bit of a throwback, though, doesn't it? But the 2010 World Cup was the last time we were debating balls. My producers just actually pointed out that David has a football in his studio there. I hope it's regulation there, David, in the Home Office, but we won't ask you to do any keepy-ups now to check that. But on a serious note regarding Arsenal and transfers, Jason Burt, writing in The Telegraph, has this: Arsenal pay for summer window errors. An elite striker was one of Arteta's top priorities, but switching to defensive buys has returned
to haunt them. Is that a sense you're getting in Arsenal circles, David? Maybe they got it wrong in the summer and didn't kick on?
I don't think I'm getting it from Arsenal circles. I think it's a fair observation, and it's a really interesting piece by Jason. And he points out how heavily Arsenal have invested in goalkeepers and defenders in particular, midfield a bit too, compared to attackers. And they've been so heavily linked and tried to make progress in the past. I remember reporting on Vlahovic and Sesko and various others, and going forward, I'm sure they'll be targeting one in the summer. I also think they'll be targeting a wide player. Those will be their two priorities, as I understand it. And, Isak is a player they also tried to sign in the past. I think it will be very difficult to get him out of Newcastle next summer, because Newcastle absolutely determined to keep hold of him and maybe try and sign him to a new contract. Mikel Arteta wants to sign Nico Williams from Athletic Bilbao for the wide position. That's his priority. He's a huge fan of him, has been long term, but the finances make that incredibly difficult, and most people I speak to think it's unlikely that will happen. Arsenal will try to do something, I'm sure, in this month and see what opportunities arise as it goes on. I don't know of anything developing right now, and clearly there's a bit of consternation among the fan base, but let's see when the window closes. And I think they can reflect on, with a bit of regret, on maybe some of the summer business and the impact the players they have brought in have made. But by and large, in recent years, as Arsenal have experienced an upturn, their recruitment has been pretty good across the board. So a bit of credit to them for that. But now the expectations rise, and they've got to deliver to them. They've got to challenge for trophies. And they look to be stumbling a little bit at the moment, but that's not to say they can't fight back in the weeks and months ahead as they try and fulfil those ambitions.
Yeah, nothing's over just yet, is it, Charlie? Quick word in 30 seconds or so, if you could. The piece here, Jason Burt points out 11th transfer window for Arteta and perhaps struggled to get a striker. Is that a reflection on him and Arsenal, or more just the dearth of top-quality strikers out there?
Well, it's easy to say now, but Newcastle bought Isak. Sporting Lisbon spent, 20 million on Victor Gyökeres from Coventry. So those players there's not many of them. Even look at Delap at Ipswich. I expect he might be going to Arsenal or a club of that size in the summer. So there's a few out there. Poor recruitment from Arsenal, particularly as they have given Arteta quite a lot of money.
Watch this space. David, we've only got about 30 seconds. Wanted to wrap up your busy dealings in the transfer window. Couple of players potentially to City, Marmoush and Kusanov. What can you tell us on that?
Yeah, those are Man City's targets now. So Omar Marmoush at Eintracht Frankfurt, a pretty prolific 25-year-old striker, Egypt international. And City are trying to step up that pursuit. And then Abdulkadir Kusanov, a central defender, 20 years old, at Lens, Uzbekistan international. And he's very highly rated. He's been tracked by many clubs, and City want to bring him in too. So that's their priority as this January unfolds, and they might do more as well.
Thank you, David. We'll keep across your X. Thank you for now. And Charlie, appreciate your time on Back Pages tonight. Hope to speak to you both soon.